Hi everyone, nice to see you all. I'm sure you're very good looking. We can't quite see you, but we know you are. We are here to celebrate 15 years of Absolute Radio, which I think, given that, 15 years, pretty good. Round of applause for that. No? OK. We have the fabulous Dave Berry, who presents the breakfast show Monday to Friday. And then we also have Frank Skinner, who presents on Saturday mornings. So, Frank, I'm going to start with you. We're celebrating 15 years of Absolute Radio. To be honest, Frank, you've been there most of it. Since you started at Absolute, a few months after Absolute started. Have you got any insights into how it's changed, or do you feel like it's kept the same?
Well, I was offered a radio show by 2 different stations, and I looked at the playlist, and the other one, Bublé, was top. Whereas Absolute playing Nirvana and stuff like that, and I thought, yeah, I've got to listen to it as well. And I think that was an insight into, I find that they are just a sort of spunkier station. They let me more or less do what I want to do. They haven't bothered me, they've trusted me with it. And I just think they're a bit smarter and sharper than your average broadcaster. I include television in this. I sound like I'm not about to go into contract negotiations. Now, otherwise I'd be saying I'm not sure about them anymore. No, it's. I think that they are ballsy. They take risks. Having me was a risk, and they've done it with other people, and they're just sharp and smart. And I think we're encouraged to think that you only get that in stuff like Six Music, whereas commercial stuff, it's all very commercial. And I like the idea of having adverts and jokes about A.E. Houseman. That makes me happy.
Yeah, the variety. I mean, you have done a lot. You've done telly, you've been on stage, you've even, obviously had a hit single over and over and over again.
Yes.
Can we just get a quick kind of summary of why you like radio? I mean, you enjoy Absolute, but what is it about radio that you like?
Well, I wish someone could explain this to me psychologically, but there is something about not being able to see the person speaking that makes it more intimate. It's counterintuitive. You'd think it would be less intimate, but I worry when I Absolute to this, and if I do an interview on another radio station, they always say, oh yeah, we're filming this. And I think, no, don't do that. You're spoiling what is special about this medium. Why can't we have an audio clip on our online thing?
Because you're so good looking.
No, but I'm not. That's another thing. The human face, as it gets older, there's a reason we all end up on radio. I don't include you in this, can I hasten? Or you, Dave, at this moment. But for me, it's taking a lot of the stress from the person who's listening to me. No, I really think there is something unique and special. And I am more me on radio than I have ever been on telly, and maybe even on stage. That's just something. I can't see the audience. I just know in my heart of hearts that they're having a brilliant time.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I won't let anyone convince me otherwise.
Well, they are having a brilliant time. Dave, so you started in 2017, but your show, because it's on every day, there's a kind of, there's an intensity to that, isn't there? There's a kind of quick progression around it.
Yeah, a crippling intensity, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Especially when you have small children.
I'm like a gentleman amateur compared to Dave. Dave's in the engine room.
I mean, you have established a kind of intimate relationship with the listeners quite early on. Did you have a kind of approach that you're very experienced in radio, but did you think, OK, I'm coming to Absolute, I need to change it in this way, or how did you feel about it when you first started?
Well, I didn't really think I had to change anything. I think you need to be genuine to yourself, particularly, as you say, if you're going to be creating radio, which is so intimate, and if you're going to be doing it every day or once a week or whatever it may be, you need to be the real article, or you're not going to get the consistency and sustainability that you want from your audience, because the kind of show that we like to make is one that involves us telling our tales and then inviting people to come and tell theirs. So they need to be hearing the genuine you, and you need to be on board, and when you bring them on, they need to be willing to give it all over to you. And what and the thing that, whether it was at XFM, whether it was at Capital or now Absolute Radio, the thing that doesn't change is that people are people. And whilst, you know, XFM and Absolute Radio had a similar playlist and Capital was obviously a pop station, the thing is that everybody has those stories that you can tap into, and that's the fun part for me. I've never, whilst I agree with what Frank said, you know, I love the music at Absolute Radio. It's the music that I would listen to in my own time. But I've never really concerned myself too much with the songs. It's always about the bits between the songs that are, you know, what I feel that I'm employed to do and what I'm best at. And, you know, a key part of that is to go in and be as genuine as you can be. There's no point in trying to be like the previous person and trying to do what they were doing, because otherwise you won't, as we do, and, you know, touch wood, you find yourself kind of 5-6 years into a run on a breakfast show, and I like to think I have a really good rapport with the audience, and they kind of understand where I might be going with something, or even if there is a curveball, they're really super quick on the uptake, and it just makes for a great show. Yeah,
it does. And then one of the things I really enjoy about your show is there's a lot of listener involvement. Do you know what I mean? It's not just...
It's because I'm lazy. I'm really lazy. As soon as I realise they do all the graph for me, I just hand it straight over. Yeah.
But you have some really good guests there, but they're not. You don't have guests all the time. Like, there's only certain guests that you would have on. They're quite high-profile guests. And other than that, it's really you, everyone in the studio, and the audience. That's who you're kind of working with all the time, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I mein, I suppose if you kind of the chair that is the empty chair in the studio is kind of filled by the audience every day, not by guests. I'm a big fan in kind of quality over quantity, and I think it needs to be somebody that the audience are going to get something out of. It needs to be somebody who's not too much on the promo train, someone who is willing to give something else over that's entertaining for the show. So I find that all of those aspects that I'm looking for come encapsulated in Helen from Manchester more than they may do somebody peddling their latest wares, whether that be a movie, a TV show, or some music.
And you have some good features on the show. You know, obviously, you think about what you're going to do. But one of the things I very much enjoy about how you've done the breakfast show is you work with Wix, and a lot of commercial stations might just do something like, OK, I'm going to read out something about Wix or whatever, and that's it. But you work with them to make a really fun kind of features, don't you?
Yeah, Wix are great. I mean, Frank is right. There is a way in which, you know, commercial radio and creativity and innovation and everything can work together, and I think it really does, you know, where we are.
We don't have a sponsor, by the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, available for sponsorship.
I don't think they like too weird.
I love the too dark for breakfast.
Oh, yes.
It's always nice when Frank announces it's too dark for breakfast as a piece of content on a Saturday morning. But, you know, with the thing with Wix is there's a few things at play with them, which is we haven't really, on the whole, made any content for them. We've come up with an idea, we've kind of got it to air, and then they go, oh, this is fun. Can we give you some money? Great. Can we be involved in this? This looks like fun. Can we play with your ball? You know, and it's like, of course you can, Wix. And the other thing with Wix is, and it's not true of every brand, and why they are a perfect show sponsor, is that they realise on occasion they're asking me to tell the nation that there's half price on compound cement. And they respect that I'm going to have some fun with that aspect. So they allow you to relax slightly with their brand messaging. So they're perfect for it.
But you don't want a sponsor who you can't get free stuff from. Power tools are no good to me. I mean, I find the men bring their own when I hire them.
That's true, yeah.
I've got 8 layers of decking in my garden. It's this high.
OK, is there an ideal sponsor that you could think of, Frank, that you might, work with?
Soft mints.
OK, fine. We'll put it out there. I mean, given that radio is, you were talking about...
It would kill me. It would kill me eventually. I'd OD. Sorry, Miranda.
Yeah,
Such a slow chew as well. What a way to go.
Oh, man. I was at a football match once and we were losing... England were losing 5-1 to Germany. And I leaned across to David Baddiel and I said, just saying, I've got soft mints in the van.
Exactly.
Literally softening the blow.
I mean, when you think about radio, you were just talking about it before, the kind of intimacy of it and the kind of joy of talking to listeners. Have you had a kind of... have you got a kind of memorable moment with the listener that you've enjoyed?
Well, we don't do phone-ins the way Dave does. We do text-ins. And I mean, I like to have an unusual text. We had a text in that was, at what stage in the morning does the Edge from U2 put his hat on, for example? But have you ever been genuinely surprised by the red arrows? Sort of like. But people send in some brilliant stuff. We were talking about what you'd like to be buried with. Like I said, they're very tolerant, absolute. And a guy
with soft
said,
mints.
Yeah, a guy said, one of our readers, as we called them, texted in and said, I'd like to be buried in medieval armour just to confuse archaeologists. And I feel we've got a funny, clever, we're a little gang that meets on Saturday morning. There's about 1 million, including the podcast. And they get it, and that's a great feeling. Whenever people get it, it's special.
Yeah, it's like a huge crowd, isn't it, rather than a stand-up crowd.
But I love that. I love that. I feel we can go anywhere and they'll go with us. You know?
Yeah. I mean, Dave, I've been enjoying on Twitter. You've been putting stuff up of all previous encounters with the famous, the highlights, and there've been some very good ones. Michael Caine, Liam Gallagher, Dolly Parton, all very enjoyable. And what I've enjoyed about them is that you play with a famous person, but by using who they are. So with Michael Caine, you would get somebody to come in and do, to get listeners to do impressions. With Liam Gallagher, you literally get him to rate his parkas. Very, beautiful ideas. Who's been your favourite famous person to interview or have a laugh with?
Well, as I say, it's about the quality of guest, and you've been quite blessed in that respect. But the kind
Can I
of...
remind you, I have been on.
I was going to say...
No, excluding me.
And the stuff about Simon Cowell was too dark for breakfast.
Oh, it was. Yes.
It's very funny. We had... I was joined by Hollywood royalty in the shape of Denzel Washington was on the show. And Denzel was not taking his promotional duties when it came to The Equalizer 2 particularly seriously. And we were filming the whole thing as well. As Frank says, that's all part of it. And we were just dogged by technical difficulties. And Phil, who was like the head of video, who I've been working with since I was on MTV, so for a very long time, he's a huge Denzel fan. And everything was going wrong. And just in the spur of the moment, I just said to Denzel, do me a favour and fire Phil for me. And what went out on air and what went out on the socials and what lives on is just Denzel Washington just in full improvisational mode. There's bits of Training Day in there, bits of American Gangster. He's menacing, he's sinister, he's funny, he's charming. And he just spent his whole interview slot firing this bloke called Phil, who's a lifelong fan. And that was what we put out. I don't think there's one mention of The Equalizer 2 being in cinemas tomorrow in the whole piece. So that was really nice.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, you probably enjoyed it more than mentioning The Equalizer 2, let's face it. The other thing that I always like about Absolute is that there's a lot of live events, whether it's comedy events or music, they put a lot of thought into those kind of events. Is there a gig or performance that's really stood out for you?
I mean, they've done some really big ones, but the one I loved was they put Tori Amos in a little former chapel in Soho. Yeah. And she's right for a chapel. It works. And my sister-in-law so loves Tori Amos. And I was able to go and take her, and it's a tiny room, and she's there. And it was just a special... She was brilliant. And the setting was great, and it was free.
Yeah. What more could you want?
That's me done.
What about you, Dave?
I was kind of thinking about this, and as Frank says, there's been some really big ones and really special ones, and that's what Absolute Radio do really well. But we are, for those who don't know, all of the Bauer stations are housed in a quaint Georgian townhouse in Soho Square. We're going to be moving soon, and they finally realised it's not fit for purpose. And our studios are on the 3rd floor, and the one lift in that building never works. And there was a period of time where it was broken forever. I mean, my calf muscles were the best they've ever been, but it was broken forever. So when it finally got fixed, and there was an email that went around, everyone email saying the lift has been fixed, we got Lewis Capaldi to come and cut the ribbon on the ribbon. which he did, because he's like the love child of Kevin Bridges and Adele. He's like really funny as a guest and then an amazing singer who can tug at your heartstrings. And then he went into the kitchen and in front of about 20 listeners did a little intimate gig for us, did like 3 or 4 songs. It was really special. There was another moment at Absolute Radio Live, which is our night of live comedy, which Frank is the compere of, and all the profit from the tickets that we sell goes to Teenage Cancer Trust, and it's back in November at the Palladium. And I was in the audience, and Frank was doing his great work as he always does. And you mentioned me, and you said, I doubt that Dave Berry's here because obviously he's got to get up for the breakfast show this morning. And then, like, some strange out-of-body experience, which I still returns to me from time to time to this day, even though it was 5 years ago, and we've been through COVID and everything since. Inexplicably, I stood up and went, I'm here, Frank! And then I thought, what am I doing? I said, and I love you, Frank! And then Matt Dyson, my co-host, put his hand on my arm and just, like, gently put me back down in my seat. And I sat there going, well, that was strange. That was a strange moment.
Yeah, a lot of people come to my gigs to be healed.
You are a guru.
Yeah, I am.
He's a guru.
I am a bit. That's lovely, though, Dave.
Well, it was a nice moment, but from comedy and music, you know, there's been so many special memories, and that's one of them, for
there
sure.
was that Elton John at Union Chapel. Was that before your time?
That's before my time, but I know of it.
He was booked to the 3 songs, and he was in such a terrible mood, we thought he might just do 2. And then he got really big applause for them, and he did about an hour and a half.
Beautiful.
And it was him and a piano, and for the first time I thought, you know, he's really good at singing and playing the piano. It's never really struck me before. Yeah, he was brilliant.
Before you just thought he was good at wearing outfits.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I thought, fancy playing pinball in those shoes. That's what I used to
And one of the things that Absolute is known for is that it was a huge innovation when it happened, is to have a kind of decade stations. And I remember when I first heard it, I thought, that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
How is that going to work? Do you know what I mean? Because, like, you can have lots of different tastes. How's it going to work? And also, I suppose, the kind of classic rock and the country spin-offs. Do you, I mean, you're possibly not allowed to say this, but you can in front of this audience. Do you have a favourite decade station, or?
Well, our default classic rock is on in our house all the time. I listen to Dave's show, but it's on classic rock. My son, who's 11, is obsessed with classic rock, so that's what it's brilliant. Yeah,
Does he have a favourite artist?
Kiss.
11, that's perfect.
Yeah, but we were at Download Festival. We saw Iron Maiden at. I wish Absolute would put on more heavy metal.
Okay.
But they did. Yeah. I'll tell you what they did do. He's mad about Alice Cooper as well. And what about this? Paul Sylvester is my boss. I got a text from him, and I talked on the radio about my son Boz being mad about Alice Cooper. And Alice Cooper did a show for Planet Rock, one of our sister stations, from America. And I just got this. I thought, why is Paul sending me? What have I done? And it was a video. Hi, Buzz, Alice Cooper here. Oh. And I didn't say, I just said, there's a message for you. And he looked. You know when people say jaw-dropping? There was a physical moment when the tendons gave way, and he went, and it was, oh man, that was just brilliant.
Yeah.
I should say, by the way, that Absolute let me play 2 songs an hour of my own choice, which I think a lot of commercial stations, again, wouldn't do.
Yeah. Have they ever put up a fight for ones that you've chosen?
A couple of times. Let me put it this way. I had an MRI scan once, and the woman said, don't be alarmed by the noise. And I said, no, this is the sort of stuff I listen to all the time. So there is
very relaxed.
There's a bit of that on it. But they're very tolerant and trusting of that. And that, again, has given the show a bit of an unusual flavour. On Absolute, not on the Decade channels, obviously.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? How did you feel about the kind of the Decades idea?
Well, I've not been allowed to pick any of my own songs, but as I say, we play a lot of the songs I love anyway. I have been allowed to take songs off of the playlist, though, which was very generous of the music
Editing.
team. Yeah.
I didn't know we could do that.
No, well, I don't know if we all can do that. I don't know if we're going to talk about that outside of the room. But no, they were kind in... they noticed I kept moving them to the end of the hour where they were going to get dropped, so they just said, should we just take them out, Dave?
Yeah, just keep talking.
Yeah.
You might just go.
There are certain artists I've just thought I'll just speak for an extra 4 minutes rather than play them.
Wow. Next question.
No. But no, the Decade Station thing. My breakfast show is one breakfast show, 9 playlists. So as Frank was alluding to there, you get the same set of talky bits, but you can have it with a classic rock kind of, soundtrack, or 60s, 70s, 80s. So I can't really choose a favourite because it's picking, your favourite child. A favourite child that sometimes collapses and plays all over itself like a mess, and you've got to figure it out 6:35 in the morning. That kind of child. But on the whole, it works really well.
All children are like that, to be honest. Let's face it.
But on the whole, it works really well. And before I joined, I was an absolute Radio 60s guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so look, I've got some questions for the from the audience which I'm going to get to, and I just wanted to say that everybody whose question is read out is, in the manner of all radio stations, going to get a mug, an Absolute 15 mug. So just so you know, so if you're lucky enough, well, they might give you one once you get off the stage.
We don't.
If you're very good.
Have you had one?
No, actually, and I'm asking a lot of questions here. I feel like I should have one for every time. Okay, but before we get to that, I just could you give us a highlight from your time at the station? The bit that if you were going to say to somebody, "Oh, this is why I really love my job," what was it? Other than talking.
I was particularly. I don't know how this happened, but I got nominated for Best Speech Programme, even though it's not a speech programme; it's a music show. And then I thought, are my links getting a little bit out of hand? And then we won it. We actually won Best Speech Programme with a music show, which obviously upset a lot of serious broadcasters, which is always fun. But that was great. But if I wasn't afraid of sounding cheesy, I would say every Saturday morning when I say, good morning, this is Absolute Radio. Just saying that now gives me a slight tingle. I love it.
Oh, that's great. Okay, what about you, Dave?
I would have to go for Absolute Radio U, which was...
that's such a good idea. I love that.
Something you very kindly wrote a little bit about in The Guardian, Miranda, which I really did appreciate. But so the idea of Absolute Radio U came to me where would it be possible to give away an entire radio station to one listener? And the reason it encompasses so many of my favourite moments is that after that, and when I pitched it into the team, all of these people went about being like professional and doing their jobs and making it happen, from tech to marketing to production, and it just came together so wonderfully, and it was just a beautiful thing. Then it was just meeting all of the listeners on the show every day with their idea of what their show would be like, who they'd have as a guest, what the playlist would be, and culminating in our winner, which was Absolute Radio Natalie, which you could get on your smart speaker. It was in the app, it was on your digital radio, and she had Absolute Radio Sing Along, which was effectively all of the songs we kind of play on Absolute Radio that you may sing along to, like Sam Fender or The Killers, and then loads of Disney songs.
The ones you hadn't taken off the plate.
I wouldn't touch Sam Fender, Frank, I wouldn't. Okay. But then lots of kind of musical theatre and lots of Disney. So it was Paul Sylvester's dream radio station already. And, Natalie was just such a wonderful person, and to bring her into the studio and for her to record her own show and her own station, and for it to go out, and then, as I say, like yourself, Miranda, thank you. Some of the kind words that were written about it as an idea and the execution of it, it's been my favourite moment to date.
Yeah, it was very good. She was lovely and bubbly, wasn't she?
She was great.
Brilliant.
She was perfect.
You did a brilliant thing as well when you contacted people who'd been in bands in the past, parents.
The band of Mum and Dad.
Been in bands, and the band of Mum and Dad. God, that was a great idea.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
Good. When did these ideas come? In the middle of the night?
I just carve out some of the time to have a little think, but it's a collective thing. I've got a very, creative and innovative team, and, we're all kind of put them in the pile, and then we'll build up the ones we think there's something in them. Yeah. But yes, Absolute Radio U and Band of Mum and Dad were two kind of big things we've done on the show that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, they're great. Okay, so look, maybe I feel like if you have asked this question, put your hand up, okay? Because the first one says anonymous.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know.
It's not my child.
But it is aimed at you. Other than soft mints, Frank, are there any other sponsors that you would like?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's, I don't know if I can say it, it's in my contract that I can veto a sponsor. And personally speaking, for example, I wouldn't have online betting because I think it can destroy lives.
I'm the same with breakfast.
But I don't feel that about beer, for example, even though it nearly destroyed mine, because most people are all right with it. So I'm pretty open. I mean, I would love something like, you know, Waterstones. I suppose something a bit encouraging to people.
Yeah,
but no, I'm not that fussy about it. I just, I don't want to do damage. I don't want to suggest, you know, power tools. Yeah, it's a great thing, power tools. Why not?
They can do damage.
They can do damage.
True.
I've seen Chainsaw Massacre. I don't think that Wick sponsored that.
That's a good feature, actually. Chainsaw.
What have you done with your power tools? Okay, so Anonymous gets whoever you are, you would have got a mug. Okay, well, we've got one here. This is from Mitty. And Mitty says, what do you think the next 15 years look like for Absolute? That is actually a really tough question. It's a bit like the kind of thing that your boss asks you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, we're having an assessment. What do the next 15 years look like?
You know, Mitty, thank you for your question. I'm just going to say one breakfast show, 452 playlists. We're just going to keep on going. It's working, so let's just keep on going. There won't be a music genre or subgenre that we have not touched within the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say the next 15 years is probably not my business. Yeah, death, but
Death and more
but not
music.
for Absolute. Yeah, there'll be the Radio Frank Memorial Station.
Absolute is what he would have wanted.
remember I said this. You'll all say, do you remember when he was joking about this? And now he is.
Okay. Anyway, Mitty, you get a mug for that. Okay,
Enjoy the bitter taste of your coffee, Mitty.
Yeah. I think she should get an urn.
just a mug with a top. That'll do.
Lovely.
I just thought Frank was so funny when I was...
Yeah.
Okay, James has got a question. Who would be the dream guest for your show, Dave?
Well, you know, I think I'll have two, and the reason I'll have two is because I wasn't in broadcasting when Oasis were together.
Yeah.
And if Liam and Noel, who separately have given so much to my shows over the years, and my personal life in some ways, if they were to get back together, I would love to have them both on, because I think together they would be dynamite as guests.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that. I'm all for that.
I've actually took Oasis off my playlist. Have you? Can you imagine? If I said that at Absolute, I think I would be executed privately.
Yeah, you would end up in your urn, wouldn't you?
I'd like to get Bob Dylan on.
Okay, well, we'll put it out into the ether.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be an absolute nightmare. I only really have guests now who I love. Mm. So I had Neil Gaiman and Stephen Moffat and people, heroic figures. Mm.
Yeah.
I used to have a guest every week, and then you realise most of them are just like putting a handbrake on.
Yeah. Well, they don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to say what they could say. Okay, so we have.
It's gone quiet, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's all right. Jake's got one.
Right.
Do you have a favourite? We've talked a little bit about this. A favourite feature you've been involved in. I'm going to twist this slightly, because you have said that you've already that you liked Absolute Radio, Natalie. Have you ever found yourself in a situation that Absolute has led you to, that's not in the station, that you've really, really enjoyed?
What do you mean by that?
I mean,
Sorry,
outside the station, like instead of a feature on the radio show, like something like presenting or something that's outside the actual confines of the radio.
Yeah, I mean, well, we try and bring as much of the stuff that's happening outside of the studio as you possibly can, and I think that's why it's nice to have the other voices that I have on the show, because Glenn is a very accomplished and talented stand-up comedian, and he's always kind of touring around and there's stuff going on, and Emma's doing a parenting podcast thing at the moment, which is interesting to hear what she kind of almost, you get the sense they workshop stuff on the show, which I really like. I mean, and Frank does it brilliantly, as just listening to his show recently. I mean, I loved the Harry Potter at King's Cross Station stuff.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I just think that general thing of like the things you're doing with your son and you bring them to air, I think, they're all important. And then it's important that you can, well, for me at least, it's nice to be able to turn them back around into what about you guys out there? And that's when
my filter has disintegrated.
Right.
I mean, I talked about having nits a month ago on there.
soft knits were
literally
not
talked
happy.
about having knits. What's going on?
Yeah. But no, but it's a great. I mean, it's great, isn't it? I think bringing those things in from the outside are absolutely crucial.
I went to the Brits with Absolute Radio. I think I'm the only person ever to go to the Brits on a freedom pass, and that is true.
Well, the Stones are back now.
Yeah, and I met a woman there, and she said, "Oh, I listen to your show all the time, and all that, and all that's lovely." And she said, "Well, we keep saying we should text in." Because, there's something that sort of involves you, and we thought you might find it funny. And I thought, it's not going to be funny, but it's going to be okay. And then she said, and I can't remember her name, but it was something like Louise Frank, and her boyfriend was called Mike Skinner. And they were going to get married, but they were worried about the implications of the hyphenated surname. Which... How could you not send that in? It was perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, meeting people and talking about the show, I'm amazed that people will say, oh, and how's your dog? You said today, how's your dog? My dog got bitten last week. You think, God, these people are just like my mates who I have a Saturday morning get-together. I know that sounds corny, but they know stuff, because I pour it all out, and people remember it. That's great.
Just be reassured that Frank's dog is recovering well.
Yes, she's still got the staples in, but mentally she's good.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so we'll end on that.
Yeah, I tried to launch a vigilante search for the owner of the other dog. You can do things like that on radio.
Yeah, you can. So if anyone's thinking of getting into either radio, you can launch a vigilante attack on dogs and owners of dogs, and also Frank's still looking for a sponsor. But other than that, I'd like to say...
Well, I'm not really looking.
We're putting a price on someone's head with Wix.
Yeah.
I'd like to say thanks very much to you, lovely audience, and thank you to the fabulous Dave Berry and Mike Skinner, Frank Skinner. Hooray!
Thanks, man. Thanks, everyone.